We will talk more. Well, that's the thing is, I am recording this. This will be going out afterwards. So also the chat is also being recorded. So please be sensible. Um, yeah, yeah. We will be starting at about 1:15. Um, hopefully, hopefully everyone should be here by then. If not, then we're going to have a very limited debate, considering only one of the candidates is here at the moment. But it's fine. Uh, yeah, just to confirm, people are able to see the poll results in the on the CRN channel, right? Well, I'd like to confirm that they're on the channel before I, stop yapping about them for the next 8 minutes. But I just need to make sure that they're up and visible, because otherwise I then have a lot of work to do. Okay, great. In which case, uh, can I do a smart switch over to I think it's that one, isn't it? No, that's not it. That's it. That's the one. Okay, just switching over on my. Okay, so now my PowerPoint slideshow is showing. So, yay! Hey, congratulations, everyone. I'm going to go through the results. Um, for those of you who are listening in on the stage currently, this won't make sense unless you're following along with the YouTube video. So, but I'll endeavour to go through quickly the results of the straw poll. So, firstly, we're going to discuss the voting intentions by group. So, for all the candidates, there were a bunch of people who put them first, a bunch of people who put them second, a bunch of people who put them third. For communitarian states, there were 3 native citizens, 0 non-native, and unfortunately no ambassadors filled out the form. Compath had 3 native and 0 non-native, and Vikrant had an equal split of voting native citizens and non-native citizens who unfortunately are unable to vote. Yeah, there is potential consideration for there's potential consideration for next time in terms of like the GenSec election and the WAD election, sort of allocating a proportional block of votes, like for example, not an equal number, because obviously that, the whole point of allowing only natives to vote is to protect against mass mass immigration. um, but the idea of allowing non-native citizens to vote, I think, is not a bad idea. Personally, I'm not opposed to it. It's just this is our first election. Let's not cause any controversies here with non-natives just basically deciding the winner outright. So we'll have time to work on the scheme for next time. Anyway, talking about the second place votes by voting intention. So, yeah, it's a pretty it's an interesting pattern that I spotted when I was looking at this, because if you were voting for communitarian states and it was ranked choice, if communitarian states lost, then your votes would go to Kenneth Bethonic. If Kenneth Bethonic lost, their votes would go to Vikarand. And for the first few minutes, all the Vikarand voters were sending their votes to communitarian states, so it's a bit of a rock paper scissors decision. However, Vikarand voters do seem to be the most divided on who their votes would go to if Vikarand was not in the election. So there is that. Next, we move on to the opinion polls. So we had 9 respondents for the opinion polls. Um, yeah, really happy. It means that I get to do some data analysis. um, yeah, how citizens view the core values of Communitas by voting intention. So, firstly, one of the main questions was: is role play a key part of Communitas as a region? Everyone responded yes, that is the case. Vicar voters slightly less um, polarized on the matter, um, which is a theme we will tend to see. Is Vicar voters tend not to be the most polarized. That tends to be kind of Bathonics voters, apart from a few key issues. Uh, Next one is the events are a key part of Communitas as a region. Kind of Pathonic is the one who comes out in the lead with people agreeing, with communitarian states actually having someone who slightly disagrees. And here we begin to see the example of kind of Pathonic having fairly polarized voter base, as they are the only ones who are polarized in this situation. External relations are a key part of Communitas as a region. Again, this is sort of what I was expecting. Communitarian states voters very strongly agreeing, with Compath being slightly more neutral, and Vikram voters actually starting to disagree with the statement as a whole, and Conis Pathonic as a polarizing figure. Discussion is a key part of Communitas as a region. Now, for the first 2 hours that the poll was open, it was completely 100% agree and very polarized. This is actually a slightly different buck to the trend because communitarian states voters are completely polarized on this issue and also completely agree that discussion is a key part. Then we move to being on nation states as being a key part of Communitas. And this is where we actually see our first real spread. And by spread, I mean a very large spread of voters, with Vicaran voters tending to vote yes, it is important for us to be on nation states as a key part of Communitas. Kind of Platonic voters very split, actually. Some very strongly agreeing, others very strongly disagreeing. And communitarian states voters tend to disagree with that statement. They think that being nation states isn't particularly a key part of being on Communitas. Being a Discord server is a key part of Communitas as a region. Again, this is one of the ones that was very clear cut from the very start. As the candidates will note, as I've been given constant updates on the information provided by the poll, it was for a time completely 100% agree, 100% polarized. However, a few last minute changes has meant that there is now a slight unpolarization among the Vicaran voter base. Again, something we'll see is Vicaran voters tend not to be too polarized, so not a surprise there. But it just shows that Discord server is clearly a key part. Polarized means 7 or 1. Should have mentioned. So it could mean that you're strongly in favor, could mean you're strongly against. So yeah, it's basically to sort of clarify how strongly someone feels for something. So external relations, our allies represent our values very, very well. Vikram voters 100% in agreement with that statement, with Compath a bit more varied towards neutrality, and communitarian states has some slight disagreement with that statement, which I wasn't actually expecting that quite a lot. I was quite expecting communitarian states voters to be very high on the allies and external relations sections. So to see this result is a bit of a shock. But and on the concept on the topic of polarization, again coming through with a slightly more polarized fan base than the other ones. Then we have I understand how our external affairs department operates. Communitarian states. This is where I started to go, yeah, this is what I would expect. Communitarian states strongly agreeing. and actually Connors-Mathonic and Vikram voters tending to vote around the same, all around the same polarization levels. It's just a clear difference between Communitarian States voters and Kompath and Vikram voters. So whether that will result in something in the election, we will have to see. But there are a bunch of other decisions that might be a bit more divisive. For example, the ambassadors from Communitas scheme. Um, yeah, people overwhelmingly said that it was a good thing. This is actually a reverse of the polarization trend, with Connors-Mathonic being actually a little less polarized than the other two, Communitarian States voters and Vikram voters being tied for just a bit polarized, and the voting opinions. Kompath is in agreement, and then Communitarian States is next strongest, and then Vikram voters are the least confident, but they are still saying that it is a good thing. So that's the opinions there. Yeah, that's right, Western Union. That was my assumption, was people who would vote for CWOX are more likely to vote for external affairs, but surprisingly, that's not always the case. Um, as seen with the allies, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing. Certainly, I shall go into a lot more detail about this on the CRN upload, and analyze the ins and outs of the election. But yeah, so external affairs team doing a good job of running our embassies. Um, yeah, Communitarian States voters are 100% agreeing and very polarized. They very strongly agree with that statement, which is not surprising considering that the person that they are voting for is the current head of the external affairs team. But um, yeah, kind of Bathonic voters are slightly more neutral, and Vikram voters, again, we tend to see the difference between the voter bases here, with Vikram voters starting to slightly disagree, but not by much. The E18 could do more embassy hunting. This is one that I was actually expecting to be negative for Communitarian States voters, so I was not surprised when it happened. Um, Communitarian States voters thinking the E18 could do more embassy hunting, that makes sense. We have a lot of allies already. Kompath voters actually voting in favour, and again, we see Kompath being fairly polarised. And then we have how our citizens view the handling of nation states' website by voting intention. The previous WA delegate did too little work with WA. Here we actually see a bit of an interesting split. We have kind of Bathonic voters who think no, the WA didn't do too little work with it. Vikram voters slightly more agreeing with the statement, and Communitarian States voters very split. It's a 60 to 30% split, so it's it's very interesting to see that being divisive among a voter base. Um, Previous WA delegate did too much work with the WA. This is where we see Communitarian States voters pretty much united in thought, all polarised, all disagreeing with the statement. They think that they definitely did not do too much work with WA. Kompath is actually the more agreeing with the statement, and Vikram voters are also they agree that somewhat with the Communitarian States voters that the WA delegate didn't do too much work. And then we have I fully understand how the WA works. And this one's actually surprising because there is only one voter base that has anyone that disagrees with fully understanding how the WA works, and it's the Communitarian States voter base. Considering that part of EA is the World Assembly as well, um, it's interesting to see that. But ultimately, I can understand where that's coming from, because if you're looking for someone to teach you about something, potentially looking to the External Affairs division might help. Counterphonic voters, the most knowledgeable about how the WA works, apparently, with different voters slightly less so, but still very strong in the WA and knowledge. Then we get to a opinion one about the previous WA delegate, where during the tenure they were able to grasp and debate many of the WA legislations that were on the floor. This one was a very unpolarized issue, um, with several split votes, um, with communitarian states and Vicarand tending to be somewhat split 50-50 on whether they were able to or weren't able to debate, and kind of Pathonic voters tending to be able to debate WA legislation more. The public safety officer is doing a good job. Um, yeah, pretty much everyone bar one voter said that the public safety officer was doing a good job. Um, Unsurprisingly, the Cardiff fan base, not fan base, voter base, was completely polarised in complete agreement with the statement. Again, it is showing the support for the candidate, I guess. I wasn't surprised at that. Communitarian states voters, the next highest in terms of thinking that the public safety officer is doing a good job. Um, and yeah, we again see kind of Platonic fan voter base being very polarized on the issue. The Moderation Council is doing a good job on the website. This is, again, the Compath voter base is, very, very polarized, very in favor of this issue. Shows that potentially the Compath voter base is more of a nation states focused voter base, considering these two questions about the websites are very supportive of those conditions. Vicar voters are the next highest, with 60% slightly agreeing with the statement. And then we have communitarian states voters, of which there is 33% slightly disagreeing with the statement. That being said, there is still some fairly strong in favour sentiment towards Moderation Council from communitarian states, so pretty split there. Role play. The role play is very active, is the first statement there, and it's actually it's actually pretty similar across the entire voter base, which is unsurprising because it's less of a subjective position here. What I would have meant to say was it's as active as it needs to be. At that point, you can then agree and disagree with the statement. But yeah, we see pretty much like 30% to 50% disagreeing with that statement, while 60% are saying, yeah, no, it's fairly active. The role play is very interesting. This is where communitarian states voters really come out in force as polarized voters. 100% agreeing with the statement and 66% being polarized to the point that they strongly agree. Then it's kind of Platonic voters. And then, ironically enough, the IA secretary voter base is at 50-50 between agreeing and slightly agreeing, which I thought was a bit odd, but maybe it's just a polarization issue. But anyway, the the role play moves too quickly. Everyone was either neutral or in disagreement with that statement, with Compath and communitarian states being equally polarized on that issue. Communitarian states quite vocal against it. Actually, I think the figures are wrong there, but I'll make sure to correct it later with a correction. But yeah, no, those numbers don't add up. It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, yeah, people were strongly against, strongly disagreeing with the roleplay moving too quickly, and you'll then see the counter to that is the roleplay moves too slowly. What's weird to note is I will note here is vicar and voters. They don't actually. One of them swaps places, but one of the voters did vote slight disagree for both the roleplay moves too quickly and too slowly. So clearly, vicar and voters thinking that the role play moves at the right speed. And again, we see for roleplay, communitarian states tends to be a lot more polarized, um, which I guess is a bit ironic considering that communitarian states is external affairs. But how citizens view our events by voting intention. So this is events. Um, there should be more events hosted for everyone. Counterpatholic voters coming back in with the polarization and agreement maximum. Everyone saying that yes, more events should be hosted for everyone. Um, and Vikram voters actually tending to be unpolarized on this issue and being the slightly less agreeing, not necessarily more events in terms of what they would want, but that's the future. There should be more citizen-only events. This is where Vikram voters are very. These are more polarized and they are strongly against. Um, and that sort of it makes sense in terms of the person that I guess you're voting for. I was expecting that. What I wasn't expecting was the communitarian states and counterpathonic votes to actually be so somewhat like balanced. They're about equal. Obviously, communitarian states is a bit more polarized than the counterpathonic voters, as it is quite a lot with the internal affairs department. But that being said, they do average out to about the same point in terms of being slightly in agreement that you need citizen only events. And the final section, which is, of course, the quality of events, has been good. And in this one, we have pretty much identical for communitarian states and counterpathonic vote bases, with 60% in strong agreement and 33% in slight agreement, whereas Vikrand is actually a bit more neutral and slightly unpolarized. And that is that's the result for the polls. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just going to transfer back over to Discord on yes. Okay, yeah. So say hello in the chat, everyone. You will be being recorded and potentially uploaded. Oh my goodness, where is everyone else? I said 5 o'clock. I said 5 o'clock. Yeah, yeah. Hello, yes. So Snub, Narodovia, Western Union. Oh no. Ooh. She works. Well, at least you're here now. uh, and so we're just waiting on Counterpathonic. Yeah. We can actually close that. No, we didn't move it to tomorrow. That was not the idea. It's 5 p.m. today. Um, The quicker we can get it done, the quicker we I don't want to leave it too close to the deadline, guys. Okay, we have 7 days to start the election. This yeah. Yeah, we'll give Compath a few more minutes to see if they are coming online, and then if not, then I will invite the two people who are currently in to join us for debate. Yeah. They're fashionably late. Fashionably late. I will say, because the WA debate has started later, I will probably be opening the voting slightly delayed. Apologies to those who are finding this out by watching the video that will be uploaded later. Um, yeah, sorry, debate shenanigans. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, I'll give them. Yeah, a little bit of time left. We'll start at 35 past. Um, so yeah, yeah. Say hello to the CRN viewers. That's who this is going out to. Because quite fitting that a news channel is broadcasting. I know this is a video, not a stream. This will be a video because yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. I'm sure the tomato can write an article like this. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So just because you have a rival news company that's not produced anything of late, doesn't mean you get to call CRN cringe. Oh wait, I misread that. Never mind. Ignore me. Oh no, cringe. Actually, yeah. What did happen with that communitarian states? Oh, hold on. It's 35. Okay. Um, with that, I'm actually going to invite the two of you to speak, and we'll see if Compath gets here eventually. So, welcome to the very first World Assembly delegate debate of Communitas as a whole. Yeah, I know, riveting stuff. But in all seriousness, we now have two candidates on the floor. So obviously, at any point, if you would like to pose a question, we'll take the questions at the end. Just put it in the chat, and then I will ask either all of them, or if you specify one person, just that one person, a question about their base, and then hopefully, compass, just in time. Well, good news, guys. We're all ready. So, I will say the candidates have been given a list of questions that I will be asking him, and then there are a list of questions that um, I will be making up on the spot, and there are obviously the questions that you will have. So please make sure you are asking questions because it's the way you can know who best to vote for. That being said, we're going to start with introductions. So what we're going to do is I'm going to call on the three candidates to give an introduction, and all they're going to do is they're going to tell you who they are, what they currently do, how long they've been doing nation states. Yeah. So we're going to start with Kenneth Pathonic. So if you want to take it away, introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Kenneth Pathonic. I am the public safety officer for around a year now, although I believe it's approximately 11 to 10 months, so that is mildly incorrect. However, my apologies for the misrepresentation of that. I would like to... My apologies, Litho, check me out. I have not prepared any particular speech on this.
Yeah.
And would you mind if I go last in this particular debate?
Oh yes, no, absolutely. Having just seen what has been stated, yeah, no, you may absolutely go last in this debate, just to give yourself a bit of time to think about what you're going to say. That being said, we'll move to our next introduction, which I will pick communitarian states to go next. So, communitarian states, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, hi. I'm Seawox. I am currently the External Affairs Secretary of Communitas. And yeah, that's my role. So basically, what I've been working on thus far has been looking at our interregional relations, which has some overlap with World Assembly affairs already, but it's something that I'd really hope to look into more and to work more on if I were to be elected to the WAD position.
Cool. And finally, Vicarand, our third candidate.
Hello. I think this volume is okay. I am Vigurant. I'm the Internal Affairs Secretary for Communitas. I have been on nation states for just over a year now. And I'm known for being the happy one.
All right, thank you. So, now we're moving on to the second segment, which I like to call the "What is your platform?" segment. All three of the candidates were informed that they would be given at maximum 2 minutes to provide why that you should pick them as the next WA delegate. So in order to facilitate Kenneth Pathonic's requests, we will be starting with communitarian states. Are you able to start?
Yep. So,
hold on, give me a sec. Let me just. Okay, your 2 minutes starts now.
I think the main reason why I would suggest that I would be a good bet is because I'm already doing a lot of things which somewhat overlap with the role, and so it will be quite a smooth transition. So I've already got quite a lot of ties to other regions, which of course would be important insofar as discussing getting bills passed through the World Assembly. You're going to need to work with other regions, and I've already got those ties. I think the other thing that makes me quite a positive force in terms of being a candidate for WAD is because I'm someone who's quite good at working in a team structure, and I'm someone who I think can offer somewhat less active engagement with certain elements where I think WAD is less necessary, and I think I can focus on more on some of the areas where WAD is more necessary, so more of the governmental focus as opposed to focusing on getting involved in every affair going on in the server, which is more so within the wheelhouse of the GenSec, and I think can sometimes cause some discontent and some strife on the server when the WAD is overly involved in the ongoing affairs of the server.
Thank you very much. Vikrand, are you able to go next?
Yes, I can.
Okay, in which case your 2 minutes starts now.
So, hello, as you may know, I am the IAS, and as you may also know, I am incredibly active. I have no life. That's not very professional, I'm sorry. I have had experience in many roles. Because of people not always being the most active, which is not their fault. I'm not blaming them. But it is a bit of experience I've got under my belt. I have helped with international treaties as well as holding events. I believe for a while at the start, I was running the World Assembly debating thing. I think at the start I was. So I've got a little bit of experience in all those areas, and I'm happy. We all need a little bit of happiness, don't we? Yeah, that's that's what I think I'm good at.
Great, amazing. Thank you for that. And Compass, having had time to come up with your answer, why should the citizens vote for you? You have 2 minutes starting now.
I intend to resume several of the, I believe they were Thursday events where we would hold party events. I'm aware that they were halted due to lack of interactivity. However, I am willing to re-engage those in order to try and appeal to citizens and make sure that everybody's there. I know that for several of the events that it was incredibly disheartening to IA, especially when it was just me and Vikrand in the thing waiting for people to engage. And then we were there for an hour. That was mildly disappointing. But we're happy to try and engage with that. We're happy to try and, as WAD, I would be happy to try and push for us to be more engaged as a region. For example, with the backstabber diplomacy events, those are quite fun as a thing to be interactive with. And various other internal events I would like to try and push for to try and get us more engaged and active as a region. I'm aware that on nation states, while we're rather not active currently, and currently the WAD serves as an advisory role, I would try and engage with more regions. While I acknowledge that, unlike Seawox, I've not been as active in that regard, and I would need to make up my credentials in such a way. I would be interested in further engaging with those. I know I've had an internal facing role, however, I would like to jump in on doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, that was the why you should vote for them. Next, we'll be moving to questions on the state of Communitas, which is a segment that's going to address some of the points that were brought up in the straw poll. But first, Reggie, I'm going to give them the nice, easy. The questions have been written down first. Give them time to continue to mull over the results from the straw poll. So, first question we're going to ask is: what is your opinion of the handling of the WAD role from the previous delegate? That is to say, how well did the previous WA delegate conduct their duties? In your opinion, what could be improved? What was very good? Yeah, so we will start with communitarian states again, I believe.
So I think that one of the main things that I think was successful in Josh's term is that Josh did do a very decent job of ensuring that they were active within the server. I think where I would do act slightly differently is, sorry, the dog's just walked into the room. I think where I would do slightly differently is, whilst I want to remain massively active within the server and especially within stuff like the roleplay, which I think is something that makes us very unique as a server. No other region that I'm aware of has quite such a developed roleplay as we do. I think that there are some times when, to do with stuff like the running of the different councils which help run the internal affairs team, when it comes to stuff like some of just the day-to-day management of the server, I think that somewhat the WAD being slightly less active in those regards can actually be really positive. Still being an active member of the community, but I think by having more defined boundaries of where the role of WAD lies, I think that you can avoid some of the challenges which we face under previous administration. I think the other thing that I would say that I have quite a lot of, I'm quite excited for in terms of what I would do, is I'm really excited for trying to expand our WAD affairs. So currently we don't have much going on with regard to WAD, though we have passed bills through the WA through the World Assembly. I think that the main thing that what we would really want to do and see, though, is more collaboration with other regions, and particularly getting more of an understanding of what the actual position of Communitas is with regards to WAD affairs, whether we're more international federalist or national sovereignist.
Sorry, I appreciate that you have a lot to say on the topic, but I'm going to have to cut you off there for time to make sure that this doesn't go on for an hour and a half. Just to clarify to all the candidates, although this wasn't particularly mentioned, in terms of the answers to the questions, preferably if they could be kept to under 2 minutes. Obviously, if you're going to go over 2 minutes, but you're at the end of a statement or at the end of like a paragraph or something, then I may let you continue. But for time's sake, we're going to try and keep it to about 2 minutes. With that, Vicarand, your answer to the question of how you think the WAD role was handled last administration.
Right, thank you. Judge did an amazing role, and it was a shame to lose him. I think. I don't know how much people remember, but at the start we definitely had hiccups. But he grew into the role, and I think, as much as everyone wants to say the WAD did this, the WAD did that. The WAD did too much. The WAD did too little. He did a good job for as much as we want to say Communitas should have been doing XYZ. At the end of the day, Rainbow House is still a new organization. A lot of the people in it, we're new to this sort of thing, and we don't know what we're doing. So everything Judge did was incredibly good. Of course, there's ways that can be improved. Of course, going forward, it would be nice to see more participation in the nation states part of the World Assembly. But just for getting the citizens hyped up and interested in the World Assembly resolutions inside inside a Communitas, I think there was definitely something progressing. I think there was definitely something progressing there, and what Judge did was amazing, and we need to keep it going.
Cool, great, thank you very much. And finally, Kenneth Pathonic, your answer.
Thank you very much for the stage, Lithotechnia. Now, the previous WAD, as Vicarand has previously pointed out, was an exceptional voice at what he did. He was incredibly internally focused and focused on making sure our region as a whole had a united voice behind him. However, I would like to expand the role to try and include our external embassies and relations with external regions. Now, I know that while I personally haven't had much engagement with that, I, as WAD, would like to try and push for more citizen collaboration with other regions. I know that at one point the Western Union set up a interregional diplomacy system, which I do not believe is currently still active. However, I had heard good things about it while it was still in operation. I would like to argue that we should continue trying to do this, try and introduce interregional diplomacy, such as with fellow allied regions such as Itinga, and try and create a more unified and more interactive diplomacy with fellow regions, especially with concerns we've had over the fact that all nation states are WAD relative to other friendly regions of comparable size have been rather minimal in terms of WAD endorsements. We need to get those up in order to try and emphasize the fact that we are ultimately bound to nation states as a region, as Communitas as a whole, and not just a Discord server, and try and expand our alliances to try and bring in people from our fellow allied regions, try and include them in roleplay on top of our existing roleplay participants, especially the incredibly active
Compress, I am going
Yelati
to
and
have to cut you off
Narodovia,
there.
where you've
Sorry.
been driving forward the
Compress.
apologies. Is that
yeah,
2 minutes?
I did try knocking, but Discord is not working. My gavel does not apparently get picked up by my microphone. But yeah, no. In which case, thank you very much for those answers. Our next question is, if I could find the list of questions. Yes. What is your current opinion? What is your opinion on the current state of the citizens of Communitas? It's more of a how do you think the citizens are feeling? You know, how do you think? What do you think that the citizens want in terms of just generally? Doesn't have to be to do with WA. It could be to do with EA. It could be to do with IA. Just basically what your understanding of the citizen base of Communitas is. Yes, Western Union, I do have a gavel. Perks of kleptomania. Don't worry about it. Anyway, we're going to hear from. Actually, tell you what. Should we change it up a little bit? Should we change it up? Vikrand, are you willing to speak first?
Yes, apologies for the delay. I was not prepared to be called on first, but I'm here now.
Okay, great. In which case, 2 minutes maximum on the current state of the Communitas player base.
I think as IA currently, I have quite a nice view of the citizen base. I love them all. I keep saying this in every interview I do. I love the citizens. I love how varied they are. I like how different previous experiences shape personalities and things that we want to see going forwards. Like for example, we've got people who have roleplay backgrounds who want to see roleplay going forwards. We have people as well from other regions who see what we have to offer and get involved, and they bring their own experiences. Like for example, we have Stavra, who came from another region and now is making new role plays and inviting people to get involved, and generally that's awesome to see. The fact that we can have ambassadors from other regions come and add their own little spice to Communitas makes us a multicultural hub that I think is so special. And the fact that we have the councils as well is very cool. No credit to myself. Anyway, what do the citizens want to see going forward? I think more collaboration with each other going forward, more collaboration with other regions potentially. Um, Hopefully, a new World Assembly delegate would be able to bring in a newfound interest in the World Assembly. Which right now I think we've seen a few people like Leslie. have, but hopefully with a new World Assembly delegate who can bring some new fire to the stage, that's what we will see.
Cool. Thank you very much for your very well-timed answer there. With that, communitarian states, in order to keep kind of Chronophonic, people wishes to go last, you'll have 2 minutes if you would like to answer.
Could you just remind me of the question? I just want to make sure that I get it correct.
Yep, sure. The question is, what is your opinion on the current state of the Communitas player base? And obviously I did give the expanded definition, but is that enough to jog your memory of what you're answering?
Yeah, certainly.
Right.
I think that we're incredibly lucky to have the group of people that we have. And I think this is in several ways. I think firstly, we're incredibly lucky to have a group of people who are as nice as the people that we have. As someone who's looked at a lot of other regions, I cannot say that there is a single region that I've seen that I think has a nicer, more communal, more collaborative, friendly atmosphere. I think that this is an incredible strength of us and is something that makes me incredibly happy. I think the other way in which we're incredibly gifted and incredibly lucky is that we have a lot of people who are very good at what they do. We have people like Vikarand, who is an absolutely incredible internal affairs secretary. We have people like our GenSec. We have people like the ambassadorial team, who I have to give so much credit to. I think they are amazing. And of course, we have the assistant external affairs secretary, Western Union, who is an absolute legend and would be an incredible incredible at carrying on with any sort of external affairs work. I think that what we have is a group of people who are really nice people, but I think also we have a group of people who are very successful. I think one of the things that we can do, and one of the things which I think is important, is I think sometimes we don't do a brilliant job of explaining what's going on within Rainbow House. And I think that this sort of, to some extent, I want to kind of pull down the sort of wall that exists between the citizen player base and RH, because I do think that it can be somewhat of an opaque body that doesn't actually explain what's going on, doesn't actually explain what's happening, doesn't actually explain why decisions are made, or indeed give people the opportunity to comment on those things and to make decisions about them.
Yeah, thank you very much. I assume my gavel works now. The only problem is I have to then mute up because for some reason my microphone seems to be reverberating. Anyway, with that, Kenneth Mathonic, you now have 2 minutes to answer the question on what you think, what your opinion is on the current state of the player base.
Thank you very much, Lithochechnia. And I have to say, your gavel is certainly loud enough that I have heard it. I would like to say that our current player base is fairly active, although I would like to diversify our current player base. We currently have a decently active player base within a week with various players, especially Umbrathor, Yeledzi, and Narodovia being active on a weekly basis. However, I would like to try and deprioritize roleplay engagements. We do have roleplay engagements as part of our RP. However, that does seem to be having a limiting level on our roleplay engagements. Rather problematically, we do have a problem of narrowing in, i.e., our roleplay events tend to limit the scope of discussion and debate. It tends to be isolated to one or two events. I would like to try and introduce a more individual-based system where we could have individual nations call in roleplay events that they would like to appeal to as their country to get international involvement in. I know that there was discussion about having that for previous events. However, that didn't quite come to fruition. And I know that the timeline slowing of roleplay events, especially to 1 day IRL equals 1 day roleplay time, is somewhat limiting to various players. In terms of our current player base as a whole, outside of roleplay, I think we're.
Sorry.
My apologies, Narutobi.
That is 2 minutes.
Sorry. Elsie, is that the time?
Yeah, that is 2 minutes. I'm afraid. Okay. Thank you very much for that kind of Chthonic. And like I said, if at any point, if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat, because that way we can then address them. I'm not going to scream violently when the time is up. That's not how a debate works. Don't be so silly. Yeah. Anyway. Absolutely. Wow, it's funny you say that. Don't worry about it. Anyway. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to our next question, which is actually quite linking onto one of communitarian states talking points, and so we're going to go to them first. Is what is your current opinion, or your opinion on the current state of RH and the surrounding government agencies such as Moderator Council, Roleplay Council, and the ambassadorial team? So yeah, communitarian states, you have maximum 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I've already somewhat touched upon this. I think that RH, by and large, works as an institution. However, I do think that, yeah, I think it works as an institution insofar as it gets the things that it needs to do done. I think that it doesn't thrive as an institution because it ends up being somewhat insular and ends up not listening to the voices of the citizen base as much as I think that it should. I think that this is the sort of thing that we can definitely work on by having better engagement with people. So this would be through stuff like more active engagement of forums whereby people can talk to people, and I think it's also just like on a personal level, trying to make a very welcoming atmosphere whereby people can actually go and speak to the WA delegate, can go and speak to the GenSec, can go and speak to the IA or EASEG, and say what they are thinking about the region. I think somewhat what has become the norm has been RH doing what RH thinks is best, and then occasionally asking for input from the citizenry. I think that input from everyone on the server should be the norm, personally.
Okay, thank you very much for that very well timed answer. We'll now move to Vicarand for their answer.
Hello. So I'm going to have to agree with Seawalks there, and we do need more citizen input. That's why we now have things such as the ambassadors program. We now have the twin councils, and we had the OGM. Those are probably the first steps we have to doing that. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
The question was, what is your opinion on the current situation of RH and surrounding government agencies?
Right. Okay. Yes. I got it now. Sorry, my mind went blank there. Yeah. So RH has room for improvements. As we've seen, we've had the we're learning through trials. As we've seen, the assistant internal affairs scrapped in place of the twin councils. And we've seen the introduction of the first government meeting. I'd like to have another one, but of course, whether they happen or not is not up to me. All I can do is poke and ask. And Really, I think RH will improve as time goes on, but we do need citizen feedback. Citizens who want to criticize us, feel free to stab LC. No, no, don't. That's unprofessional. Um, yeah, we need citizen feedback, and we need to keep building off of citizen feedback, because that's how we will learn and that's how we will grow. Government emergencies also help us grow, so maybe we need some more of those. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Although I will say, government emergencies, while they may help us grow, they also help me grow white hairs. So potentially not more of those. um, anyway, yeah, we will now move to kind of Bathonic's answer to opinion on government agencies and RH.
Thank you very much, Lythotechnia. To refute a little bit of what Vikram said, government emergencies are not entirely supposed to be used as a routine semblance of how we can increase participation. They are supposed to be actual emergencies. However, moving very swiftly on, I would like to argue that we should have a limited expansion of the various councils we've set up. We've set up a roleplay and moderation council, one of which is under my oversight, being the moderation council as PSO. But I would like to argue that we should expand their powers in order to try and encompass the various roles that we have had. For example, especially in the roleplay council, we have had some limits in terms of various issues, especially cartography when it comes to the roleplay map. I would like to argue that when it comes to cartography, we should be able to have a cartographer who is able to it's not move, but move is the only word I can think of right now. Move their responsibilities to the roleplay council temporarily in order to have involvement from citizens at a higher level. These councils should also be able to more interact with RH. We currently have a limitation in RH that we are all volunteers and that it is all our free time that we're sacrificing. None of us are actually getting paid for the dedication that we put into the server. But I believe that some of that work should be offloaded onto citizens. We currently have a suggestions system. Sorry, that's the end of the term.
Yes, that is the end of your time. Thank you very much for those answers to those questions. That is all for the written questions. So we're going to move to a few non-scripted ones where we're going to have them thinking on their feet for this segment, and then we're going to allow for general questions from you as well as questions to each other. But first, we've got to get to the unscripted questions from me. Hello, yes, the election administrator. So, the first question that I'm going to ask is to do with the straw poll. In fact, all these are going to be to do with the straw poll. And that is addressing some of the opinions of the voters of U3 candidates. And we're going to look at one of the most divisive questions that was on the poll, which is being on nation states is a core value of the region. Yeah, so that was one of the questions that was on the poll, and as I went through in my brief overview at the start, it turns out that communitarian states voters tend to disagree with the statement, Bathonic voters tend to be neutral on the statement, and Bitcoin voters tend to be in favour of the statement. And what I guess we're going to find out here is whether our three candidates agree with their voter bases in terms of, do they think that being on nation states is a key core value of being communitas, or if it's transitioned into being more of a server front thing, and the nation states thing is more of an afterthought. So it'll be interesting to hear what they say. That being said, who would like to go first for the random question?
I'm happy to do so.
Okay, great. Communitarian states, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I think that actually what is true here is that it isn't a core part of the server's identity, and I think that's somewhat problematic. I think that it's just obviously true that it's not currently a major part of how most people in Communitas engage with Communitas. You can just see it by looking at the comparative engagement and how active the regional message board is compared to the Discord server. The Discord server is far more active than the RMB. I think, though, that this probably isn't how things should be. I think it will always be true that the Discord will be more active than the RMB because this is where we run our roleplay, because our roleplay is more developed than most other regions which run their roleplays on their regional message board. So I think Discord will always be more active than the RMB. However, I think that there are a lot of ways in which we can increase the activity of the RMB. I think there's a lot of ways in which we can increase the activity of the server. This is through doing stuff like looking at World Assembly, which currently I don't think we've done a very good job of explaining how the World Assembly works to people and encouraging people to get involved in World Assembly affairs. This is something that I would personally take a lot of interest in if I were to become WAD. I think it's also doing stuff like engaging with other regions, looking at stuff like defending operations, which again is another thing which will get people more service time, and it will open up new ways and new avenues for people to enjoy and interact with the wonderful community which we've built here on the Discord server, and to expand it out onto the nation state server itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we've either got Vicarand or Compath, whichever one of you wants to go next to answer the question of is nation states the nation states website a key core part of Communitas?
I think I will let Compath go last, as I think he likes to go last. So sure,
Okay.
I can go next. So I kind of agree with my my voter base saying that yes, being on nation states is a core part of the region, because in the end we are a region on NS, and there's nothing we can do to change that. That is what we are. I understand the take that it's not currently a key part, because in reality it's not. There's so much more that we could be doing, but we're not seizing those opportunities. So that's definitely something we need to be looking into. But at the end of the day, that is our identity. We are a region on NS. And at the point where we have people joining us who aren't from NS, have nothing to do with NS, that's the point where we kind of have to ask, are we doing something wrong? Because at the end of the day, NS is our home. We should be doing more to recognize that and recognize our roots. You know, as much as we wave around figures like Marum Grunzi in history books, we should also be waving around nation states, because that's also who we are, even if we don't wave the flags a lot. I think it's important to recognize that. And so to summarize, I agree with my voter base, very based.
Okay, great, amazing. And Kenneth Pathonic, with the neutral voter base, do you believe that nation states is a core part of Communitas?
Thank you very much, Liza Checkinger. As a region, in terms of our overall interactivity, I don't see nation states particularly active. I have tried to engage personally with the question of the day, for example, when it was posted, to try and increase our interactivity and engagement with nation states as a whole. But it doesn't seem like particularly much engagement goes on there. However, very much like Vicarand, I would like to say that originally we are foundationally a nation states Discord server. And as much as the Discord server can operate independently of nation states, we still need nation states ultimately, because nation states ultimately is what provides our foundation for how we operate. We very much have a roleplay principle of your nation is what you engage with as a community, and that is what you expand from there. I know that not everybody has heard of the Westphalian system, but it is very much like the Westphalian system of your nation is your home, and that's what you engage with, and anything beyond that is engagement with other people, and that is what I would encourage. But moving back to nation states, we need to expand our engagement with nation states. I know that there's been limited engagement with questions of the day within nation states on the Moderation Council and the Roleplay Council, but it doesn't seem to have gone particularly far. I would like to advocate for question of the day to be brought back. I know that minimal people. Right, that's the end. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you very much, Kenneth Pathonic. I'm just cycling through the questions, looking for one that's. Yeah, we'll go for this one. This one's been addressed by communitarian states already in one of the points. But another one of the questions was during the previous WA delegate, I was able to grasp and debate many of the WA legislation on the floor. Now, this is not necessarily a divisive question in so much as there was a clear split between voter bases, but in this case, there was more of a split across each voter base in terms of ability. So for communitarian states and Vicarand, there tended to be a relatively even split of voters who were able to grasp and debate WA legislation, with Kenneth Pathonic voters tending to have a higher ability to debate WA legislation. So basically, the question here is going to be, in the future, obviously, we've had people highlight a need to interact with nation states more. Obviously, part of that is the World Assembly. So I would like to pose a hypothetical question of how would you, if you were the World Assembly delegate, go about making the interaction with the World Assembly easier? And what strategies do you think that we have done in the past can continue to operate? With that, who would like to go first?
I'm happy to do so if you want to.
Okay, great. In which case, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, so I think the thing that I would most want to do, which I think would be the most successful thing to do, would be I want to start writing WA legislation communally. I want to create a channel in the Discord where we can work together to write a WA bill. If we have a discussion amongst ourselves of what sort of topic would we like to address, would it be something like a human rights bill? Would it be something, or would it be would it be a repealing of some legislation that we don't like? But I think that if we have a more communal atmosphere and an active community program working together to try and pass WA legislation, I think that would massively increase the amount of like activities which we can engage in on the server. I think also it's the sort of thing where people will learn by doing. I think that the other thing is that I do want to try and if elected, I'd want to try and write some sort of guide as a guide to how does WA work, how does the World Assembly work, how does WA legislation work, and within that, I'd want to reach out to some of our friends and partners in other regions who I've already collaborated with to some extent on WA legislation, and work with them to go, what's the best practices that you have found that we can use when trying to help people get involved in the WA? Because I think that WA legislation is incredibly good fun. I'm someone who loves writing treaties for the roleplay, and it's very similar to that. So it's something that I think would massively appeal to me. I think it's something that would massively appeal to a lot of people, considering that we do enjoy writing large documents, and we do enjoy writing documents in general. That's generally how the Security Council sort of stuff works. And that's the sort of thing that I would do to try and improve WA understanding amongst the player base.
Thank you very much, communitarian states. So the next person to come up, if you'd like to decide now, Vikrant and Compass.
I can go next.
Cool, great.
So I agree with Seaworks. There needs to be a sort of guide. There needs to be a WAD encouragement process to get people more involved. I agree with that, but I don't think Seaworks goes far enough. See, one thing that's been misinterpreted even here is the World Assembly delegate does not get a say over events. That is primarily the IA who does that. We have it enumerated that the World Assembly delegate is meant to work with External Affairs Secretary and the assistant. Why don't we push that a little bit further? Instead of just having the World Assembly delegate work with EA, why don't we pull IA into the mix and create an event to help people write World Assembly documentation? For example, we could have an event challenging everyone to write their own proposals, and whoever makes the best proposal wins. And the person who wrote it can work with the WAD to make that a full proposal. Maybe that's something that could be looked into. I think the World Assembly delegate should also be having a, presence on things like the NS forums, talking about the World Assembly proposals, in the World Assembly Discord server. Did you know they have a Discord server? It's genuinely quite cool. So I think we should have more of a presence, because the more presence we have, the more respected we'll be on the world stage, the more we'll learn. Generally, it will set us up in a much better position than we're currently in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Vikrant. And obviously, as is now become traditional in this debate, Gareth Mathonic, the question obviously is, how would you, hypothetically, if you were the WAD, encourage the participation and interaction with the World Assembly?
As a whole, the World Assembly doesn't really hold terribly much impact, in my opinion. Although on nation states as WAD, they do have an important interregional position. If you're not interacting interregionally, the WAD tends to have a much more limited role in what it can do. I do very much agree with Jash's position on it, which was an advisory position of this is exactly how we as a region should vote. But I would like to expand the explanations as to how we would vote, especially where Jash would only recommend this is exactly how I would particularly vote. I would like to add a explanation as to why this is a particular way I would vote on World Assembly documentation. My apologies, Elsie. Could you very briefly repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, hypothetically, if you were the WAD, how would you go about increasing WA participation?
Right, WA participation. That also includes WA endorsements. I know that as an alliance region, we have a variety of alliances, and we also need to increase our endorsement rate, because we currently don't have a particularly good endorsement rate as a whole. I would like to argue that we increase our friendliness to new nations. For example, we had a especially big bottleneck with our cartography team until quite recently. I would like to try and reduce that and allow nations to more easily integrate into our system, especially on the map, in order to more. That's the end, right?
That is the end, yes. I like how my this is the end moment has now just become I unmute and reverberate the noise. I'm not sure how well that's going to go down in the recording, but we will see. Um, anyway, so thank you very much for those questions. That will be it from me in terms of the unscripted questions from me. That being said, we will now be looking for questions on the chat, and then we'll move to a bit of cross-panel examination. So if anyone has any questions in the chat, please, please put them in the chat. Questions that are relevant to the WA debate, please. Got several people typing, which is good. Okay. Obviously, candidates, please be keeping in mind. Okay, yeah, candidates. Once you've gone through these questions, you'll have chance to question each other. But the first question comes from JACJ, previous WA delegate, which is, how do you plan to increase activity on the regional message board? Very good question. Who would like to go first?
I mean, I'm already unmuted, so I guess I should do it. Yeah, I think. Sorry, do you mind unmuting quickly, Elsie?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I am so sorry. Oh, come on. Oh.
Sorry, I'm just going insane hearing myself repeated back to myself on a slight delay. Okay, I think what I would say in terms of getting more activity on the R&B, I think there's obviously a limit to what you can do. So unlike what I think some people have suggested, it's not the case that under the current governmental structure that the WAD delegate has the ability to create events for citizens and to organise and run events like that. That's under the provision of the IA secretary. What I do think that we can do, though, is I think that by being personally active on the RMB and personally chatting to people, welcoming them when they join the region, and also by speaking to other nations on game side, so speaking to other regions on the nation state's gameplay site, I think that we can actually increase and expand the amount of RMB activity, because by speaking with other nations and regions, we can get them to send nations into the Communitas region, and then in that way, I think that we can massively increase the amount of activity that's going on. And I think that also by working with people like the Moderation and RP Council, and particularly with the Internal Affairs Secretary, who is incredibly good at their job, and I think in all worlds would be incredibly good at their job, I would be massively happy and massively excited to try and I do think that I could expand the R&B activity.
Okay. Thank you very much. Vikrand, I believe. Would you like to go next?
Yes, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. The question was, how would you plan on increasing RMB activity?
Thank you. So, increasing activity on the RMB is something that we kind of need everyone in RH to come together to do. As mentioned by Seaworks, the World Assembly delegate has no jurisdiction over things like events, QOTD. The WAD can't do those. So it then devolves into what different approach could the WAD take? And again, I think that is interacting with NS as a whole, not just Communitas. I think the WAD needs to remember that their title is the World Assembly Delegate. They are in the position, not just for Communitas as a frontier delegate, but also for the World Assembly. So I would hope to see more talking to people on the forums, which would then translate into more people who are primarily NS coming onto the RMB, and then being active on the RMB to have those discussions with people who are only RMB and not on the Discord. I think that's the best answer I can give. Sorry. As I said before, I think this is an approach that everyone in RH needs to do collaboratively. I think there needs to be a push for that, which can only happen as a team. Thank you.
Okay, cool, great. And finally, again, kind of platonic, how would you increase RMB activity?
I entirely agree with Vikarin's final point of the fact that events are technically not within the WAD repertoire, and that it is technically a devolved power to RH that especially internal affairs would be forced to take the brunt of, especially if we do increase it to a weekly event schedule. However, I would like to argue that if we do expand the participation, especially when we take into account the previous week, or rather weekly event structure that we did have, we could allow the participation of further regions. We would allow greater interactivity by allowing a weekly event, be it on diplomacy or any other game system such as Hoi 4 or any other online gaming system that allows for interaction between multiple citizens on account of increasing the RMB participation. I would like to argue that while we have had a system where the mod council can post that, that's the end.
Yeah, that is the end, unfortunately.
My
Apologies.
apologies.
If you want to finish your statement, that's fine.
The mod council could post activities, but we do not currently have the authority to post questions. We should post questions in the announcement channel.
Okay, thank you very much for answering that question. We are now going to move to a question from the Upper Kilka and its expansion by Western Union, which is opinions on the Sovereign 7 and your WA position in terms of whether you are INFED or NatSov. I believe communitarian states is probably best to start with you in terms of you've clearly demonstrated knowledge on the subject. Considering I don't know what any of those things are, please obviously take the stage.
Awesome, and I think I might have to run off after this one as well because I've got to I've got to go and eat some food. But what I will say is, so firstly, with regards to the Sovereign 7, the Sovereign 7 is a interregional alliance of several large regions. It includes a lot of regions that we have historically decent ties with, and it includes some regions who we do not historically haven't interacted with much, which makes it a really interesting prospect. I think that it's certainly interesting, though I do think that the Sovereign 7 exists almost as something of a power, something of a power block as opposed to an active federation of regions. And I think that looking at stuff like our position towards smaller frontiers and our particular view of collaborationist frontierism, I think that actually focusing more towards smaller regions and large interregional federations and power blocks like the Sovereign 7 is probably more in line with the identity of the server. And I think also it is the sort of way in which we can actually do more, have more impact, have more effect insofar as communicating with people.
Yes, thank you very much. And yeah, if you need to go and eat, then that's fine. What we will do then is I'll actually, because also it's getting very late and the recording is getting very long. So what I will do is I am going to basically we're going to ask one more question of Compath. So if Seaworks and Vic, you need to leave now, then that's fine. Obviously, if you want to stick around and listen to what the question is and potentially give your own opinions on it, then that's fine. But what will happen is the questions that have been submitted by the other citizens who we didn't get around to doing, I will send them to the three candidates, and they will then have time to write a short answer to each of the questions, and these will then be later published while the election is ongoing. Yeah, so thank you very much to all the candidates. But for Kenneth Pathonic, you have one more question. Yeah, no, oh yeah. So another point as well is cross questions. Obviously, if the three candidates want to send a list of questions they want to ask each other in to me or in a chat that we have, please feel free to, and I can also address those in terms of you can then answer each other's questions. Or we could do it at a later date if you wanted to record it as a soundbite. But I think that in terms of answering questions, sending them back and forth would be best. So with that, Compath, your question from Naradovia, specifically to you, is you've mentioned holding several events for citizens. What sort of things would you be hoping to organise? Is the question from Naradovia.
Thank you very much, Elsie. I believe that I previously covered a limited extent of that, where I discussed Backstabber and Hoyfall games. But I know that previously we've tried to encourage on a weekly or bi-weekly basis engagement with a so-called events night where we hold a series, or rather one particular event which we try and get engagement for. I know that that was suspended on basis of engagement. However, I'd like to argue that or as WAD, I would like to try and presume that either under the Internal Affairs Secretary or as WAD pursuing that independently, pursuing a regional event style thing where we have a interactive event allowing for the interaction of multiple citizens, be that diplomacy or some other form of game. I know that several were discussed, including online Uno at some point, but allowing for greater engagement and more people participating on a more regular basis. But I would like to try and presume that from its previous inactivity and suspension that has not continued since sometime mid last year, I believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Kenneth Pathonic. Obviously, this question was directed at Kenneth Pathonic, but I will now open this up if any of the other candidates have anything to say on this at all. Yeah, if you want to.
I can chip in as IA. This question is really confusing because the World Assembly delegate does not handle that job. That is not a position that the World Assembly delegate handles. That is Internal Affairs' job. If you have questions related to that, that should be directed to Internal Affairs, not World Assembly delegate. The World Assembly delegate has no powers to do that, so anything they would do would be of their own volition, and it would be them as a citizen doing that, not as a World Assembly delegate doing that. I apologize if you've been misled at any point, but that is not the World Assembly delegate's job. If it's something to do with external affairs or getting external affairs involved, then that event could fall under EA. But yeah, that's not something World Assembly delegates should be handling. Yeah, that's not the World Assembly delegate's job at all. I apologize for any confusion.
Okay, cool. And obviously, communitarian states, you have a chance if you want to for disappearing. If you want to address points made, or if you think that everything's been covered, then that's fine. I think they may have gone already. In which case, what I will do is, given the fact that this has taken over an hour and 40 minutes, and upload speeds are incredibly great, combined with the fact that people need to leave, we are going to call it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the first WA debate. As mentioned, there will be messages sent to the candidates with all the remaining questions that have not been asked. And then the responses will be posted into the announcements channel in the election thread. And yeah, election should be opening at some point tonight. I will probably do it at about 7:30, considering the time it is now, and the fact that I also need to eat. But yeah, so 7:30 tonight will be the election opening, and it will run until Tuesday 7:30. At which point then a count will be taken. Probably not immediately, considering that I will be at an event running it, but it depends. I'll probably be able to get around to it at 8. So by 8 o'clock, we should have a new WA delegate announced, or we'll have to do a runoff election if there is a tie. Everything is outlined in the elections announcement. Yeah, I think that's it from me. Yeah. If the candidates want to say anything before we go, then feel free. But I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop recording soon. So.